It's a divisive issue, but a change in Prime Minister has renewed hope for supporters of marriage equality, who are calling on the new PM to allow a conscience vote in Parliament.
It's too early to say what the Turnbull government is going to do on the issue of marriage equality. One of the first things that Prime Minister Turnbull said when he was elected as Prime Minister by his party was that there was going to be an end to the captain's calls, that this was going to be a cabinet-led government.
But it's a possible change not welcomed by everyone, including the Australian Christian lobby's Nick Jensen. As societal, doesn't it have a civil definition?
Well, I think it had a clearly understood cultural definition before a civil definition. Partly in the letter as well, you realise that the state only got involved in marriage very recently in history, and that was around property law and dealing with divorce courts. That's the only reason they got involved. So then, if the state then gets involved and said, all right, we'll help facilitate some of this breakdown in relationships, some of these tricky issues around these relationships, it's a big step to get to the point when the state says, no, even though this already existed, we now own it.
Supporters of marriage equality point to the fact 72% of Australians are already in favour of enlarging marriage, calling a plebiscite a waste of time and an estimated $100 million in taxpayers' money. You're hoping Prime Minister Turnbull would change the party policy on a plebiscite?
We are hoping that the Prime Minister changes the party's position on a plebiscite, for sure. Yeah. The easiest, simplest way, as the Prime Minister said in Question Time 2 days ago, the idea of actually holding a vote in Parliament is the cheapest and fastest way to achieve reform. He recognises that. It makes perfect sense, and I think it is the easiest way in which we can actually move on this issue as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Despite the new PM being personally in favour of marriage equality, he's yet to formally address the issue. However, opponents of marriage equality say that if we're going to change the definition of marriage, it needs to be left up to the Australian people. What about Christians who say, well, I'm going to interpret this, and I'm going to say, I believe that people should, I believe that we should just live and let live.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and I've got friends who would take this position and still, be professing Christians. But you can read Shakespeare, and you can say Shakespeare is actually criticising the lack of action on the Syrian refugee movement. That's what he was actually talking about.
Yeah.
And this is my interpretation of Shakespeare. Now that's great, but I think author intent matters.
Schooling up the organisation to have the capacity of coping with a plebiscite or an election campaign, or both at the same time, So we're in the process of turning our organisation into, from a small organisation into one that may have 30,000 volunteers.